everyone. uh, First of all, thank you to the people here at TogetherCon for hosting us. And second of all, I think we should very quickly introduce ourselves. Thank you for being up so late for, I think, the last panel of the con.
Yes, the last panel.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So, um, for those who don't know, I'm B. I use he, him. And I am the writer and voice of Treff on Parallel to Anywhere. My
And
co-panelist, Midnight.
hello, that's me. I am Midnight Blue. I go by she, her. And I play Rosara, who is the other main character of Parallel to Anywhere.
Yes. Uh, well,
Hmm.
I don't know what how we would want to start, but I think we
Hmm.
called you up. The purpose of tonight is to talk about crossover, multiverse nonsense, and a little
Yes.
bit about our show.
Yeah. Our show
So
is about crossover multiverse nonsense. What a
exactly,
coincidence.
it's a very good fit. Um, so for those who don't know, Parallel to Anywhere was a weird project that we started last summer that
Mhm.
is both a TTRPG show and also has audio drama episodes.
Yes.
Um, when our characters cross over into worlds from different tabletop role playing game podcasts, we will play a one shot in their system. And when the story needs the time to focus on our major characters, we do a Trek and Rosara story. And that's fully scripted by us. So PTA is all about seeing the multiverse going around and doing crossover. Um, and I think the first thing to talk about would be like how you would do it maybe at your own game, be it a home game or a podcast or anything like that. Um, so Midnight, do you have
Oh.
any initial thoughts? I'm trying to pass this over to you for a second.
Yeah. Um. I. I guess yeah. Talking about doing multiversal stuff. uh, it takes a lot of organization. But we'd like to think that I think it makes for a very good story, especially if it's the type of story you're wanting to tell. Um, not every game is a multiverse crossing over, jumping through different planes and whatever. But the ones that are, I think, are very enjoyable. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it takes it does take a lot of effort to get
it is a lot of effort, a lot of planning, but they're well worth it.
for sure. Uh, I will say one of the most fun parts looking back on Parallel to Anywhere was getting all the people involved because Midnight will tell you that basically kind of happened under your nose.
I tell the story of B going, oh yeah, I want to do this cool thing, and I want to do a whole bunch of different like guest episodes with all these podcasts I know, and I'm like, okay, B, for sure, I'll make a character, yeah, sure, okay. I don't hear anything about it for like 3 months, and then all of a sudden B goes, oh yeah, so hey, I've made a whole server, I've organized everything, and this is when we're all playing with everyone, and this is when we're recording, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, what, huh? So yeah, um, it did. Especially because we were organizing different multiverses as different worlds in different worlds as in different people's creative projects. It required a lot of planning, but
Yeah,
uh just to organize people together when we were going to record, that kind of thing. If you're just playing in your home game, you know less organization is needed. You just got to call up your buddy and go, hey, can we
right,
join you for a
exactly.
second? This is gonna be fun and cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
I I think it's a really fun thing to do, but also can lead to a lot of interesting potential because so many people. Here's the thing: so many people make a lot of interesting characters, but within the context of one party, they tend to have two or three critical dynamics, and
Mhm.
throwing them into a whole other scenario really is a fish out of water scenario for them. Uh,
It's almost the AU. Yes, so I'm answering the question from the chat. So we are playing the same characters, and they're just moving through different worlds. The premise of the show is that Treff is lost in time and space, and he has a watch that teleports him from place to place to place. Um, we think at the beginning, Chef hasn't gotten to this point yet, but at the beginning he believes he is just traveling through time, but in truth he is traveling through both time and space and going to alternate realities and things like that. Um, I think that's a pretty good uh, summary of what's going on. I don't know if you want to add anything, B.
no, that's about accurate.
Mm. We are all we. I believe you didn't use different systems. I believe these were all D&D systems,
Uh,
correct?
that is true. It was open to other people, but it just came down to who
Yeah.
agreed to the season when it came out, and
I will
majority of the
say,
majority of
yeah.
people were using D&D. I had fully expected to work Treff into other games and other systems.
Yeah.
There were talks to have an Apocalypse World one shot in there and a Game of Inspiriles, but those time scheduling wise just fell through and became scripted episodes.
Mhm. I think that if you're willing to put in the work to homebrew stuff and that you really know both the systems very well, I think that it certainly is possible to to port a character literally from different TTRPG systems. I will say that it is more difficult. Certainly it is more difficult. Cuz especially with D&D 5e itself, it doesn't have as many analogs to other more simpler possibly TTRPG systems or just
Yeah,
different styles for what you want. Um, it tends to be that D&D characters I have found when kind of working around with this, they tend to be more powerful in other systems than maybe you would want. A D&D character showing up in Call of Cthulhu would absolutely be overpowered, and you would be very difficult to finding a way of fixing that.
yeah. Which is why usually with PTA the characters had very like sentence concepts that kind of went beyond just their race or class or anything.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, Treff was a lost kid with a magical artifact he doesn't know how to use, and that can be put into a lot of different systems in a lot of different contexts.
Yeah, it probably made Treff easier to port around. I believe you have made a character sheet in D&D 5e for Trev. He is technically a chronomancer wizard, duh. But the real magic, the real thing that's moving him around is the watch, and that's completely extraneous to him. So he doesn't necessarily have any magic. He doesn't have to have any magic himself.
Exactly. It was a very it was a little difficult, of course, but like it's really fun because it makes you like coalesce the character concept down into something very basic, and then even though the character themselves has all of their traits and everything, if you boil
Mhm.
down their power or skill set into something very simplistic, you can put them in a lot of different places. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, that's one of the allures of that the multiversal kind of campaigns is that you're jumping around and you get to see what your characters do in something that's completely outside of what they know, and you get to test and push them quite a bit. What happens when I don't know, the naive kid gets thrown into the apocalypse world, or when the jaded, cynical fighter gets thrown into the cute little world where everything is corgis. Yeah, I don't know. I just made that up. So you get to seeing how they react and just seeing how the people there react is very interesting and has a lot of potential for character depth and dynamics, I think.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, I also think that there's a lot of fun to have characters who show up pretty consistently in your worlds and having that connect.
Mhm.
Um, I think you know exactly where I'm leading with this, but
Well, I do. I don't know if everyone in our beloved panel has played a game with you, B.
no, I don't think so, no. I will let you tell a little bit about this.
Okay. So, B has a character named Vega. I assume this is where this is going.
This is where this
They
is
are
going.
a multiversal shopkeeper. And so they have shown up in a bunch of different campaigns that B runs, and probably in ones that he's not running. And they sell items and information, but not for traditional. I mean, there are monetary costs that you can find, but you also sell things like stories and secrets, and that can be used to pay for these items. And the thing about Vega is she can't leave her shop.
Yes.
She's stuck there. She's just stuck there, and the shop itself travels around.
The
Um,
shop can be anywhere at once, basically.
yes, anywhere and everywhere at once.
But she has to stay inside of it to have that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so every one of my campaigns, at least all the ones I'm currently running, have had a run-in with Vega and have uh through that had brief glimpses of each other, which is really fun, like describing items that they sold appearing on the shelves or, you know, place things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this fun little interconnected web, even though these worlds and characters have absolutely nothing to do with each other, you know?
Yeah.
Um, Vega is this weird tether that connects all of these stories and worlds, and I don't know, that kind of stuff is really fun to me. It is
Mm-hmm.
also a great way to have what do you want? It's in this shop because Vega has everything from everywhere. It is a
Yeah.
great way to avoid like, oh, I want a cool bow. Oh, well, this town doesn't sell bows. Guess you gotta find somewhere else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, with Vegas shop, you can find just about anything really because, well,
Yeah.
you get to determine what's in her shop because she has been everywhere. You can also use this kind of concept to like plant story beats because someone who's seen every universe might know things about the creatures you're dealing with, or they might know someone who can help them in this scenario and be willing to put you in touch, you know? Like those are the kinds of unique angles you can go with when you have someone who has that power level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did it with the shopkeeper because if they were a major character, I feel like the entire campaign would take a much wilder turn.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there certainly is a difference between having like one character that the DM plays that shows up in multiple different universes, and there's a difference between your characters themselves being multiversal people who jump through all the different planes, whether they jump through all the different planes in, the D&D setting or in just in planes that you make up. Um, I will say it's good to have, unlike what, okay, I'm gonna use some writing terms here. I'm restarting here, but there is sometimes soft magic systems and hard magic systems. Soft have looser rules, and hard have more structured rules. It's my opinion that if you're gonna be doing this multiversal kind of story, you need to have some hard rules. And you can play around with those rules and see whatever works for you. But for instance, in Magic the Gathering, which is another multiversal story, you can only jump between different planes once every 24 hours. You've got a time limit. You have to stay there for a certain amount of time. You can't just jump into a plane and find something's gone horribly wrong and then immediately jump away. Um, for parallel to anywhere, the hard rule is the watch. The watch operates on rules. Treff doesn't know those rules, but it has certain rules. It must charge before it can jump again. It charges using magical energy, or using the functions of the watch in order to continue charging it. In game, in the story of the podcast is being made because Treff is using the recording function on the watch to charge it.
right.
And then later on, foreshadowing, we will play around with the concept of the watch and how it charges and what that means. Um, and but that's very much spoilers. So I would say if you want to do this in your games, you should probably sit down and plan out some hard rules that the players have to follow
Yeah.
um, in order
Um,
to make it function better because it's incredibly powerful to be able to just basically teleport to another dimension anytime you want. And it needs to be measured and kind of balanced.
exactly, yeah.
Mm, I don't
Um,
know. I don't know
the
if you want to add
in
anything to that.
I would going on the like hard rules angle, I would say the only other really campaign I've run that use multiversal travel tend to have those hard rules without even knowing it. Like you have Sigil where you can go anywhere, but you need that key to those doors throughout the city. And you have Planeswalkers where it is an innate ability, but it only happens to some people, kind of like a sorceress origin. And
Yeah.
they can only use it like once a day or so because it's a very
Mm.
intensive process. Um,
Yep.
those are like those are kind of very simple to understand hard rules, but they do put a limiter. They do put a something there, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that also makes the party feel more balanced when telling a story like this because if you could just pop around anywhere, then there's not a lot of incentive to stay, I guess.
Yeah. Um, I think. Oh, I had a thought. Oh no. Um, you better continue. I gotta.
Okay, no, you're
Yeah.
good. Um, I will also say that the other um the other complicated thing about running these kinds of stories is that like you have to make some pretty clear distinctions pretty quick between like the way these other worlds work. Are you going to do the type of AU story where there's another version of the same character, for example, or is this like it's another plane, there's a whole other slate of people? Because if those start to get a little mix and matched, I can tell from early times I used it, it gets really confusing. um,
Yeah.
that was kind of a problem that happened in Frostwalker, was my first project, where I kind of didn't make that differentiation and things kind of got a little hard to follow.
Yeah, certainly one of the pitfalls of kind of writing these type of stories is it can be a lot. It can be very confusing and overwhelming for your players. So you want to like break it down, take it to them slowly, and start slow and ramp up. I think is probably the best piece of advice we could give you for that one. Start slow, ramp up. Um, Also, looping a little bit back to the rules, that's where the rules also come into play. The rules forcing your players to stay in a certain spot for a certain amount of time helps them get more acclimatized to what they're doing and how everything works.
Yes.
Um, you will find that a lot of the multiversal realms have a limiter on how many times you can do it, and there is a very good reason why that limiter exists. Um, I know sometimes where people I know that sometimes when I go, I see something and be like, "Oh, every single one of these stories has this rule, you know. I'm going to make a story that doesn't have that rule." Sometimes you should not do that, and this is one of those times.
A little bit, yeah. Um, I,
uh, that rule's there for a reason.
I will say with PTA specifically, going back to it, another thing that was interesting and also kind of difficult was with the way Parallel to Anywhere specifically is structured. Our guests had basically a story to get people to get a vibe of their world and also create a conflict in the time that Trev would come and go. Um, and I think that's a fun challenge, but also it is a challenge to like take years and years of world building on your home project to take all of that concept and then okay, how do I tell one story that can give people enough of an idea of what this place is like where they might be intrigued to like do something more in the setting, but also not just turn it into, "Hello, yes, this is my tour of my brain rot setting. Come and follow along. This is the plot is you walking around and seeing my cool things now." Which it's pretty difficult actually to not do that, especially when you're emotionally tethered to a world or project and knowing you have a limited amount of time.
For
So
sure.
that's a pretty fun but also very difficult problem
Mm,
with those kinds of things. But I think it's rewarding as well because you get to see everyone in your party or everyone in the group or all the writers on the Parallel to Anywhere episodes like really share something special to them and important to them about their world and these stories, you know? I think giving you that limited window to share something about this whole project of yours means that you like distill it to the important thing, you know, to that like key concept that you would want someone who only had one day in this place to really get, you know?
mm.
Kind of the same deal with running a one shot in like a homebrew world or a home built world. Um, but I think with one shots it's like a little easier because you assume that these characters exist in this world and you could pick it back up again, you know?
Yeah,
But
for
with
sure.
there's not so much a risk of like, oh, and they'll never come back. Whereas with a multiverse story, it's far more likely that they might not come back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looping that in, I think that depends on the kind of plots you want to write for these types of stories. And there are a couple I guess there are a couple of main plots that kind of you can go through for multiversal stories. We'll go over them because it might be I don't know if it might be helpful some writing advice. So like one of them is the ones we use in PTA, which is that you're lost in time and space and you got to find your way home somehow. And this but it's about the journey, not the destination. So, the adventure is all the fun you're having along the way. Um I think another one of these types of I think ones you can have is that you're looking for something. There's an artifact there's a I hate to use to overuse the word MacGuffin because it started to kind of warp and not mean what it actually means. But for the sake of conveyance, find X thing that you guys need for whatever reason, and they're scattered throughout the multiverse.
Mhm.
Um, which gives everyone an incentive to go to somewhere, stay there until they find the thing, and maybe have some adventures along the way. Um, these type of multiverse stories. You can also have all the characters. For instance, in another campaign, we play all of our characters are from different planes of existence. They've all met up together, and now we're going around to different places where we're all from, basically, and solving people's personal story arcs.
Yes.
Uh, but we
And
have the dragon lady, and then we have the slime man. So
right, exactly. And what's normal for one isn't normal for the other, and so everyone gets turns being fish in and out of water, which is really
yeah,
fun. Um,
it yeah, it was very interesting seeing where people relate to each other when they're so different, and where they absolutely don't relate to each other at all. Um,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was a
for
very
sure.
fun character dynamic.
Mhm. And then, I think that's also what you're gonna see a lot of coming into, like, now that Spelljammer is back, because that's gonna be
Mm.
dealing with planets and homeworlds and pirate crews. So, like, you're probably gonna get a lot more of those, like, different walks of life kinda stories, you know? Like, that is always at the core of these things, of, like, finding that common ground with your party members and everything, and that's always been a part of most of these kinds of stories, but I think it really has this different feeling when it's the difference between being from a different continent or culture and being from a whole other universe or a whole other planet.
The
And
culture
like,
shark gets cranked up to 11.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I mean, just talking about the episodes of Parallel to Anywhere we already have, Treff and Rosara are from like a much more modern fantasy world, more like what people
A
would.
modern version of the Forgotten Realms, I think, is what we've decided.
Yeah,
Unless I
yeah,
believe.
yeah, like Forgotten Realms in the time period that a film like Onward would exist in, maybe would be a good example.
Yeah.
Um,
They have an eye
and
stone.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the first episode, yeah, the first episode, like they're in a high fantasy setting. With our friends at the First Watch, who they got to meet the Knights of Excessa. For people who know the First Watch's content, um, they got to meet these like specialized but high fantasy knights who were very confused about Trev having things like sweatpants or a watch.
Yes.
And then next episode, he's in space and you're dealing with a pirate crew, and now Trev is the one who's like from the past, now Trev is the one who's behind. And that's a really fun thing to play with. Um,
Mhm.
in the show proper, and just seeing the different like walks of life from the other characters and how they impact the main characters, with how they impact Treff and Rosara and the people back home. Because I think that's the other really cool thing about these kinds of stories is it's it it is this like really vast case study in the way different experiences will stick with people,
Mm.
and like meeting someone from a different walk of life and how that impacts your day to day and how you move from that. Uh, that's just true of real life, of course, but like again, cranked up to 11 when you're dealing with someone from a whole other universe or a whole other planet. And I think that's something that's really special and kind of cool for someone to feel in these kinds of stories, like that they have these friends who, you know, are literally worlds and universes away, but they have those connective moments and those are real. I think that speaks to something he
Yeah.
said in a virtual convention.
Yeah. Yeah, well. No, there's a reason the isekai genre and Sword Art Online was very popular. Um
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, there
Yeah.
I know someone, this is a complete aside, but it's very funny. I know someone who made a Sword Art Online TTRPG,
Oh no.
and I play tested it
How'd it go?
terribly.
So in line with the show.
In line with the show. A friend of mine was playtesting it just before he had a channel. Just showed it to us, and we were so confused. Oh my word. It was painful.
Apologies to people who like SAO. That the bit was right there.
Our apologies. It's listen. It's, uh it's, someone put something in chat,
Yeah.
but I can't read that out loud. I'm very sorry. Great premise,
Uh,
terrible follow through. I can read out that. Um, okay. In the interest of being thorough, yes, isekai definitely counts as a multiversal story. They are very different though. Um, in that I believe in most isekais you can't go back. Um, so you know,
until like the end. Going back is like
like the end or um stuff like that. I mean, the same through line of like trying to find your way home happens in some isekai animes, but sometimes they just die and they wake up in another realm. So
yeah, that's true.
I technically they jump, but only once.
But
Um,
only what
yes.
yeah.
I would not 100% advise that for a TTRPG game, but I suppose if you really wanted to, you could make it happen.
I
Um,
would be
the
curious
world is
how
your
your
oyster,
play yeah,
and
I would be
you are all
curious
very
how your
creative
players would
people.
take it. Yeah. I just would be curious on that execution, to be honest. Um, I I think we just babbled for a good amount of time. So we will continue to babble, but I also want to say if people have questions about the show maybe and like how that goes, that whole premise, what it's like, about crossover stuff, about like things like that. That would be really fun to answer because we are
Yeah.
we are
Personally,
think We're trying
Sure.
very hard to come up with things for us to talk about that we find interesting, but we also
Yeah.
want to know what you find
Also,
interesting.
I do actually want to acknowledge someone in chat. So someone in chat said, I think the premise could work, but Matrix is your better launching point, which you are very right. But, drum roll, I don't know if anyone could hear that. That does kind of technically exist. There is a cyberpunk TTRPG. Yes. Listen, and while the character sheet is very big, that's my comment about the character sheet as I've been playing it. But if B, I'm stalling for you to get the links, by the way.
Oh, okay,
Um,
yeah. I was not looking in chat at the worst moment possible to not look in chat.
um, uh, the Cyberpunk TTRPG does definitely incorporate the Matrix in a way, and they have people called net runners, which basically people who go into the Matrix and deal with things, and can hack and do some stuff. And there's some enemies you can fight there, and there are also enemies in the real world you can fight because it's cyberpunk and everything is terrible. All
So,
the
so
time.
I'm so sorry. As somebody who grew up playing Shadowrun and Cyberpunk and stuff like that, like I get that it could be like the Matrix, in like if you in a very specific way, but not at the same time. Sorry, I'm not.
I was meaning
No.
more specifically netrunners. My DM in particular has described them as you're going into the matrix, you're going into the internet.
I guess you could describe it like that. I mean,
Yeah,
you are technically going into the internet. I'm sorry, I'm tired. It's
no worries.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
This is just my particular experience with that. Ironically, in our game that we are playing, we do not have a netrunner, and the only reason went into the matrix once is because I am an AI. I'm definitely a normal person. Don't worry about it. Definitely not an AI in a stolen body. Jazz hands. Um,
Jazz hands.
shh. No one knows. It's fine. Don't
It's
worry about it.
fine. If
Definitely wouldn't be instantly killed if anyone found out. Shh.
it's
Um,
fine.
it's fine. Yeah. Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
Journeys to the Radiant Citadel 5 ebook. Um,
It's a little similar. I think Radiant
hmm,
Citadel is set in the Astral Sea, which at least the Radiant Citadel itself is in the Astral Sea, which I think is very much supposed to be um, so that way you can reach it from other planes. And I think the astral plane is very much becoming the connective void space between the settings now, which is kind of neat. Um,
yeah.
I don't know too much about all the adventures in Radiant Citadel just yet because it's not out. We've only seen a little bit. But if I'm guessing it correctly, it's that from the Radiant Citadel you can visit all these places that have all of these adventures. And I would say that that's a pretty good base to go off of. I really love those
Yeah,
kinds of things. Having a hub world is really nice, and I think the artwork for Radiant Citadel, the writing on it so far seems fantastic. Um, so yeah, having a hub world is very nice. Um,
for sure.
it is one
Yeah.
style though. It is one style of that.
Yeah, having a home base for the characters to come back to and have somewhere that's familiar and then moving out into the unknown can be very helpful for your characters, especially in understanding and in figuring out stuff about the world. Um, and having a
This
home base is a weapon. It's a double-edged sword. It's a very nice calming spot for the players, and it's also a knife the DM can use to stab you in the back. So you know, very. Oh, we are. I like talking about, especially when designing TTRPGs, um, tools that both the DMs and the players can use. And certainly in a multiversal story, having a hub world, I think, is one of those. Um, I did have something else I wanted to mention. If you were looking for something that is technically multiverse hopping, and I've just thought of it, um, technically, Ravenloft is a multiversal hopping thing. If you want it to, there is a mechanic for how players can travel through the mists between different little demi planes and all the different domains. And and there are some rules I think that are interesting for how that goes. Especially because it's in a horror setting, which is maybe something that, well, listen, it's my jam. I love horror. Um, I'll be straight up with y'all. But it's not. It's certainly a different spin on the multiversal thing. Um,
Yes.
I
Way less
love
pulp sci-fi, way more straight up horror.
straight up horror. And I particularly enjoy what I think is particularly interesting and useful is that how you travel through the mists in Ravenloft. Um, I guess this is spoilers for Ravenloft if you don't want to know anything about it. But for how you travel through the mist is you have a totem from the plane, either from the plane you're trying to visit or from the plane you're yeah, basically from the plane demi-plane you're trying to visit. And if you focus on that thing, you can more easily find where you're going. Because the mists are supposed to be you're just walking to them, and it's very dangerous because of course horror. But if you can figure out where you're going and you don't just get endlessly lost, if you have these sort of totems. They have a they have an actual name, and I'm absolutely blanking on it. It's delightful. Um each one is different for each of the main domains. And they're sentimental. I think the one for oh, what's the one for Barovia? I think the one for Barovia what is it? I'm forgetting. Horrific memory, my beloved. Um I think one of the ones is a vial of poison because the Dark Lord for that domain poisoned everybody, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, that's all I gotta
And the
say.
thing.
The thing. Um, I will type in chat.
Um, while you do, I will also say that we for Parallel to Anywhere on season one, but
Hmm.
we're already working on two because that's just
We
how
are.
the brain works. Um,
Also because season one is pretty much all planned out, just gotta be recorded.
yeah, exactly. We're moving
Just
quick
that
through.
one episode that we haven't written yet, gun emoji.
Yeah. Look, that was a joke episode. It's fine. It's the funny one. We get to be funny.
We do get to be funny.
And uh but one of the things we talked about was doing a Dread domain in season two.
Mm,
We're using one. It's just not one of the big ones. It's one that's like a
for
paragraph
sure.
in Von Richten's guide. But
Yeah.
a very cool friend of mine wrote a whole book on the DM's Guild about expanding that specific domain.
Oh,
And
it's so good. It's so good.
I'm so excited.
The ones that have one paragraph ones are some of my beloved domains. I love them. Just I love them so much. There's one where you're like just with a pirate lady. Um there's one where you just run into a pirate lady. There's one where you just meet that one guy who Vecna screwed over, and he's just there. He's not having a good time.
But for those who don't know, that could use this as an opportunity to plug Meg's content. Yeah, it's we're talking about the Sire 1313, um,
Hmm. You like
which
Infinity Train. If you thought Infinity Train didn't have enough horror in it, you will like this.
yeah,
I
yeah,
promise.
yeah. Um, so that's gonna be fun. I don't
Mm.
want to spoil too much about season one though,
No,
because
we have to be vague.
we have to be unfortunately vague, but there's a lot of cool stuff, I think, and even in the
Mhm.
first season, even though I'm like already brain rotting for future stories. The stuff that's already there is really cool. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Um, I think I think that actually loops back around to something for more advice that we can give. You need a plan for a multiversal story a little bit more. I think if you're the kind of DM that just kind of goes, "Oh, okay, I want to do this," and then just, doesn't plan anything at all, that will get difficult.
not
You will
that I
get
would know,
confused and lost, and things will
not that
be topsy
not that,
turvy.
not that I would know anything about that.
B.
Impulse go burr. Cool things happen.
Oh my god, B. Anyway, oh, we can mention some of the other campaigns and DMs. You are completely right, Mitch. We'll do that in a second. Um, you a good plan is I'm a planner. I like planning. And planning how you kind of want each, you know, phase to go, each multiverse to go, how long you want to stay there, what you want to have happen. I think that's very good for multiverse stories, just so you don't get lost and you don't the story turns into a different thing if you wanted it to stay a multiversal campaign, because very easily your players could just say, hey, we're staying on this world, we're just not going anywhere ever again. So
Even
it's
not on
important
purpose.
to,
Even they might just get caught up in it and just like
yeah,
not even remember the fact that they could leave.
yeah, for sure. So if you wanted to keep them moving, or if you're struggling with that, I think having a good plan is pretty essential.
I would also say that if you're going to do that, if you're going to use this kind of story, you can't use the same threads. You can't use the same plot lines you would use in a typical D&D campaign. Um,
Yeah.
you need antagonists who can meet the party where they're at, basically.
Yeah.
Like if every antagonist in a multiverse hopping campaign can't travel to chase them, then there's not a threat. They can just leave, you know? Like
You probably need at least one bad guy that has the exact same power and or is trying to do something spooky.
it is a different power level,
Yeah.
just at base that you have to kind of toy around in.
Mhm.
Um, and
Yeah.
our friend Michael mentioned how we could bring up some of the other things we collaborated with in season one. I think we can say them. Maybe not what their stories are, but we can say them. Um, we worked with the
You
Tall
would know better than me on that.
Yeah, Tall Dwarf Tavern, DM Chronicles, The First Watch, Prism Blade, um, Heartbeats for people who know that podcast, Dungeons and Pop. Uh, there's a couple of fun people who we got to work with in season one. Um, we got to work with. I got to do an episode with my first campaign world. Like the first thing I ever wrote for 5e got to be visited, which was really cool. Um, uh, one of Midnight's earlier projects got to be visited, which was also, I think, really cool.
Yeah. That's a more scripted episode, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I know the episode you really like Midnight, but that's hilariously the one episode that eschews all of this content that we're talking about for the hour.
Which one is that one?
14.
Well, we're not you are banned from talking about episode 14. You were
I
not
know,
allowed. No more
I know,
spoilers.
I know. 14
Illegal.
is 14 is off limits.
Fort You utter the words 14 in my presence, I'm gonna smack you. No.
uh,
It is enough. No spoilers.
um, as for other things we've done with multiversal stuff, there's
You know what's on my side. Chroma, listen. You can't spoil the finale. God emoji.
um no, I will not, but I will just say it's a very fun episode. Oh my god, okay.
Michael has me yet joked you.
Oh
B
no.
wants to talk about episode 14. You mentioned the forbidden episode? Jail. Jail for me. Jail for 1,000 years.
uh yeah, but that's um yeah, I think PTA has just been a really fun experience collaborating with so many people and everything.
Yeah,
And
we've learned a lot about collaboration.
oh yeah. And also Crimson mentioned that they do multiverse hopping in their Sunday show, which is also very cool. And
Mhm.
I mean, I I need to catch up, but I think it'll be a really fun thing to observe the way that two different stories that have the same wide banner of multiverse hopping, how they handle that, how they approach that idea, and how that impacts the characters. Because I think that's the cool shit, TM.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. At the end of the day, a TTRPG should be all about the PCs and their characters and the kind of arcs they want to have happen. So it's although you have this wide, massive world that they can go through, it's important to, I think, personally for me, to mix up the plots a little bit. You want some more character focused plots. You want some big plot beats kind of thing. You know,
mhm. You definitely
it's
want.
important to have that balance.
I think one of the things I do when I plan out campaigns is I like to think of them as like TV show episodes.
Hmm.
And I like to think about ooh, oh, multiplanar zombies. Now that's fascinating.
I like your style, my friend. I like your style.
That's cool. Um, write that down. Write that down.
Stealing it.
No,
Just actively on air, recorded for
you're actively
eternity.
on air. Look, this is what DM. Look, this is what DMing is. It's hearing a cool idea, not not taking specifics, just hearing a good sentence and going, "Well, that's a sentence I'm going to remember forever now."
Oh, we have been given permission. Oh, fantastic. I didn't need permission, but thank you.
But no, like also
For an emoji.
that is DMing though, in a way. It's just like someone said a very good sentence. I'm never gonna forget that sentence. It might not come up now, but in like 3 years, that sentence might come back. I think this is how it is.
Just it's just how we exist. This is all being a DM is. If you're scared to DM, don't be. You just gotta be a gremlin and steal other people's good ideas.
Um
Have no fear.
so yeah, if there's really quickly, once again, if there's any other questions relating to time stuff, multiverse stuff, how to use it maybe, or just questions about producing a show like PTA, which just is weird.
Mhm.
It's a weird show. It's it's a good one, I hope, but it's one that's very difficult to explain in a sentence because it is an actual play sometimes. It's also an audio drama sometimes. The I feel like a lot of people will hear that and think like, oh, the actual play part isn't actually alive. That's not what we mean. It's that like literally episode 1 is a full script and then episode 2 is a one shot we ran with other people. It's an episode by episode thing. Um and I think it was cool because like it has the same feel of like a season of a TV show that'll have like multiple writers, but it's because there are multiple DMs each telling their story with this character in this world. And I think that's one of the most like gratifying things, to be honest,
Yeah.
is seeing like so many people reinterpret your character or this world build and like how they'll go with it. I don't know. It's really cool, and I think that's one of the things I like the most about multiversal campaigns or stories is just like you get to see this one concept iterated on over and over and over again in different and unique ways. And you get to see other people put their spins on stuff, and it's a hotbed for creative like just popping off, you know?
Sure. One of the I think one of the benefits of a multiversal campaign is that if you wanted to have radically different storylines, if you had a lot of different plot beats buzzing around your head and you don't know where to put them all, in a multiversal campaign, you can do them all. You can just put them all in one after the other. You want to do a heist one week in um, an urban fantasy, or you want to do a dark and gritty storyline the next week in a grim dark fantasy. Like you can do that in a multiversal campaign. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You want to fight Cthulhu and not have any consequences for your actions?
Not have any consequences for your actions.
I addendum in the I have played the TTRPG system Call of Cthulhu extensively, and I do not advocate fighting for Cthulhu. Um, you will lose, especially in that setting.
In that setting specifically, yes.
Yes,
It gets more.
absolutely get bodied.
It gets interesting. I also think it's interesting to see. I love the Band of Misfits from Other Worlds thing that we do with Planeswalkers and just like other stuff like
Hmm.
that. Because like,
Yeah.
it's so good.
Listen, we're just a band of homeless misfits running around trying not to lose our minds and trying to solve other people's problems. And we do it successfully. We have never not failed to solve anybody else's problems. We just listen. Our slime hit a man with a car. He applied car to the problem. Um, he applied car very viciously to the problem. B, there was a quote from B in that campaign, which is, "I had to Google what damage a car does in D&D."
This was a high fantasy character who got one look at a car, saw the evil bad guys in like their creepy masks with their big weapons, and was just like, I have a solution.
Truly,
It wasn't going to be a hard fight anyway. I mean, they were evil, but they were like grunt evil. These are Team Rocket, and they certainly blasted off. Um,
yep, that's the thing that happened.
yeah, yeah. They
Listen,
were in
multiversal
fact
campaigns,
evil.
you too could have this kind of shenanigans. If you
I
ever wanted to know
I
if your
feel like the
paladin could take getting hit by a car.
I feel like shenanigans is one of the biggest draws, though.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
They were a plot point.
Mitch has asked, weren't they a plot point as in, hey, this is what you're gonna do on this world? They were, but also they were poachers and they deserved to get hit by a car.
I they were Team Rocket. They were Team Rocket. They were super Team Rocket. Except yes,
Yes, I figured.
super. They were just genuinely Team Rocket, and it was really funny to watch them be handled the way you would handle Team Rocket, which is with
Okay.
comedic aplomb.
Hmm. I think we'll do a quick wrap up here. It's pretty good. Please, if you would like to check out our podcast, you can do so on YouTube. You can do so on Spotify. I do not know if we are on the Apple Podcast app.
We are,
B, we
yes,
are. Um, so you can check us out anywhere podcasts are found. Please give us a little link. We can also take a look at our if you want to come and hang out with us and ask us more questions. And we run a pretty cool Discord server. You can come up and say hi and get insights on like what we're doing and ask us more questions.
there's also
We answer
fun
questions.
there's live vlogs when the episodes come out, daily questions.
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes run like creative club events where we'll put up some prompts and give everyone an hour, and they'll like come up with something, and we get to share it with the community, and it's all really
Hmm.
cool. Um,
Yeah. Um, I don't know if there's anything else we could shout out at the moment. We do shout out to all our contributors and for this lovely chance to get to talk about our our podcast
nonsense.
on. So thank you very
Yeah,
much for the con to organizing this, and I'm sure it's a lot of work to do this kind of thing. I have never done it. I applaud you.
yeah.
Golf
It's it,
claps.
yes to everyone who helped make this weekend what it was. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh.
Thank you.
um,
For
I'm
sure.
I wish I had more time to have perused, but I did lurk. I did lurk the halls when I could. It's just been
Hmm.
a crazy weekend. But um I guess in finality, uh please watch Parallels.
Yes,
it's
please come check us out. We have
it's
fun. It's a good time.
yeah, that's about it. I mean, I had fun, and I hope you all had fun listening to us
Hmm.
absolutely lose it over the whatever our players do.
Listening to
Yeah.
people nerd out about things they love is one of the best things about our community.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
Totally
much
fun.
for coming and doing this panel. I appreciate you. Thank you for everybody coming and listening to it, and thank you for everybody at Twitch that's watching it.
Yeah.
This is our last panel of the convention, so thank you all so much for coming and being a part of it. We love and appreciate you. Make sure you check the announcements out. We have things there, and have a wonderful night. I'm going to sleep for a week.
Oh boy, I can imagine.
Mhm.